Everything that can be found in the universe can be found in this body. So this is what Maharishi referred to as walking universe. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. A walking universe. So the creative act here is nothing short of a replica of the original act of creation. Anytime anything is being created, it's a recreation of the original act of creation. Moreover, Abhinavagupta went as far as to give us this very clear definition of what takes place in the appreciation of the work of art. And in that, we find that it is the spectator for whose sake the work of art is created. And it is only to the spectator to whom the final experience of aesthetic rapture is fully available, not even to the artist. So in other words, you see, it is the audience, the spectator, who can truly bring the work of art alive through the act of direct partaking by living that experience in whatever way that experience being then shared. If you're obviously watching a show, if you're watching performance on stage, you are that spectator. And all the effort of the actors on that stage are for the sake of what is happening in your own field, in your own heart, as the spectator. And that is the ultimate, noblest purpose of art, just as that mythological example represented. What about the simple folk? So, seen from these perspectives, the noblest purpose of art was always seen as nothing short but ways of literally beatifying, purifying, transcending, whilst being engaged in the path of the householder, so that one can remain human. This is what makes us human. That ability to partake in the work of art in any way, in any form, is what brings the refinement available to us as human beings. And therefore, I call it hidden, because it's the least understood, often dismissed, often totally misinterpreted. Certainly, when not understood, this path is belittled. How can that be? Well, the situation is about to change. The situation is about to change as we stand on the threshold of this needed reevaluation. Because this obsession with museum culture, again, if you are to delve into the arts and the history of art, this obsession with museum culture primarily stems from the lack of confidence that we produce anything of value. It's nothing wrong with collecting the data and collecting the artifacts, but there is this obsession that we want to preserve something that is there to perish anyway, because these relics are, if you will, living examples of the grandeur we once were. And that lack of confidence is unforgivable, because there is no such thing as the past. Therefore, many artists call the experience of a museum as going similar to the one as going to the graveyard. Because works in the museum are taken outside of the context of how they're created. They're categorized. They're the mummies hanging on the walls. They have smell rotten. No matter how much beauty there is still, taken outside of the context, they no longer serve that what once went into the making of it. The purpose. You see, we go into the museums. I mean, have you seen the queue in front of the La Gioconde, Mona Lisa, in Louvre? A small portrait of a lady, and it's a cultural icon. I don't know what situation today, but 20 years ago, and you queue there too. And today I bet it's even more grotesque, because everyone queuing with their mobile phone ready for a selfie, right? So now, how do we connect the dots? How do we connect all these bits? How can we string it all together? Well, this is simple and direct appeal to reclaim your divine rights as creators, as artists in disguise, irrespective of what and how you think about it. Because that is truly who we all are. And as I said yesterday, as we have spoken about it yesterday, it's not in the grandeur of the project. It's not in how grand is the idea, the concept. It's in the inner state. That direct and visceral experience of being taken by the power of creative intelligence, which is always dormant there, waiting to be rekindled. And if we really sincere, if we ponder on this, if we sit with this, if we reflect on this, we might have find the courage to admit that we have only been alive when we have been creative. We only truly know what it means to be alive when we are taken by these creative states. Everything else seems like being daisy and dozy and drowsy and lost in a cloud. So just this for all of you to sit with and see what seeps through. Maybe a thing or two could be added just to again to maybe fill the spaces between with this, what could bring a more coherent picture still. So why aren't we feeling creative all the time? If that is so, if that is our essential nature, if this is who we are, and this is when we are the most alive, why aren't we all creative all the time? Well, I would like to take us back to that beauty is synonymous to Ananda. One is the expression of the other. And just as bliss is there at all times, and the only reason why we don't experience that bliss is because something simply obstructs that bliss. And whenever there is a possibility to remove anything that obstructs that, the bliss simply rises on its own. This is what we experience in meditation. This is what we experience when the mind stops. This is what we experience when the ego drops. This is what we experience when we simply are. This is directly available when we are in nature, unburdened, even if for a short period of time. It's granted there. Other than that, if our life is busy, has this space, and flows through the restricted channels of our actions and interactions, some practice is needed, sort of to reconnect with the original state. So the simple answer, why aren't we always creative, is because something obstructs that flow of creativity. It's as simple as that. And it is this stress is the only thing to blame. Because when stress is removed, creativity just flows. And it will choose the channels through which it will flow. We don't need to worry about how we will express that creativity. Yes, at times we may ponder. I've been doing this for too long, I've been doing that. It no longer gives me much joy. And that if we are following our bliss, then that would show us the way what to do next, what course of action to take, what field to explore. Other than that, these impulses of creative intelligence, these Shaktis, are always eager. That's all there is, as the foundational ground of who we are. So as soon as the stress is receded, as soon as we begin to dissolve any of these self-imposed limitations, creativity simply there flows, just as bliss is there, simply rises to the level of palpable experience. So in other words, we could conclude that creativity and bliss must be intimately interconnected. Beauty, bliss, and creativity are but words for expressing something fundamental to our nature. Just as a footnote, I've met a lot of people who consider themselves very creative, and they had ambition. And not that there is anything wrong with ambition, of course, it can be understood in a different way. There's nothing wrong with any of the human traits, as long as there is this profound understanding that at the base of it all is this what does not have our authorship on it. But the people often spoke of, I will do it when the situation is better, I want to write a book, or I want to write a poetry, and I will do it. My life doesn't allow me now. There's constantly something not allows in my life, in my circumstances. All these are just verbal excuses, because when the creativity is there, it just oozes out. And usually these discoveries, and we're not talking about, it's like years, you meet with these people, and I wanted to do this 20 years ago, and this conversation took place every 2-3 years. But there was always fear, because the comfort of life was always more preferred. The comfort, the security. And creative act is giving yourself to the creative process requires also a tremendous courage, a courage of conviction as well. There is not just some sort of giving into certain indulgences. Therefore, those who truly believe in themselves always succeed at whatever level. There's no such thing. Always succeed to carry forth the greatest passion of their life. But it requires courage and proper understanding. Because if we think that there will be a more conducive situation in our life for something, it may never come. Life constantly throws demands on us. Constantly. Constantly these demands, and we don't know what is there in store in terms of the causal realm. We don't know what this law of cause and effect has in store for us. We don't know. We may think that we are busy now and we'll have better time and more space for exploration and for realization of our ideas in 2 or 5 years. But we might be even busier then. Who's to say? All I'm saying here is that it's not in the grandeur of the projects that the creativity is enjoyed, but giving oneself fully to the deity, the presiding deity of the process, giving oneself to the muse, and then everything we do is a creative act. Everything we do becomes an act of creativity. So let that be a subtle reminder, so that we don't blame circumstances of what's behind our inability to express ourselves. The only reason why we cannot express ourselves fully is rooted in our nervous system not being fully freed from the impositions and stresses. So all this goes hand in hand. And you know that already. You've experienced that. And we have seen how people, when they open up and wake up, how those, just to tell you, I've seen this, how, I'll give you this example, whether you will relate to it or not, but I've seen this, just the so-called normal average women, wives, mothers, sisters, right, who never considered themselves to be anything other than the brick in the wall in that social structure that I grew up. And when they went through these awakenings, when their consciousness expanded, they suddenly found themselves and found within themselves all that richness. People were just overnight turning into painters, speaking in verses, writing, expressing in so many different ways. So there is no such thing as I'm not of a creative type, I'm more of an accountant type. I like to account. I like to count someone else's money, and I like to work with numbers. Well, if that is the area where you want to express yourself, and you see the music and harmony in that, then what the heck? Come and work for Flowing Wakefulness. As long as you're true to yourself, there is no such field which is not noble. What makes it noble, of course, it's the attitude. That what makes our heart tick. Tack. So be it. Jai Gurudev.